Kingslayer.
Kingslayer. What a king he was. Here's to Aerys Targaryen, the second of his name, Lord of the Seven Kingdoms, protector of the realm, and to the sword I shoved in his back.
Imagine you save an entire city from exploding within its walls, just for the people you saved to label you a Kingslayer or an Oathbreaker. The way that heroic knights and leaders you looked up to speak your name in disgust and distaste, making you feel inferior to them. And the way your own family sees you as a mere emissary to carry on their legacy. What I mentioned here, and what you just imagined, is the story of Jaime Lannister. The son of the mighty Tywin Lannister, Jaime was born alongside his twin sister Cersei. From the offset, they began having intimate feelings for one another that developed into an incestuous bond, with themselves viewing each other as one and the same. It was a love relationship in the eyes of Jaime, while for Cersei, it was addicting being intimate with someone she sees herself in terms of beauty. As mentioned before, he is the son of Tywin Lannister, and the eldest son after Tyrion was born, which caused the death of their mother, Joanne, who Jaime has limited memories of. In Tywin's eyes, throughout the years, Jaime was viewed as the one who brought the least shame to his family. This is the cornerstone of their relationship being more of respect rather than love, with Tywin indoctrinating his son into the belief of how people perceive you, and how the rest are sheep to the family.
You spend too much time worrying about what other people think of you.
I could care less what anyone thinks of me.
You know, that's what you want people to think of you.
It's the truth.
When you hear them whispering Kingslayer behind your back, doesn't it bother you?
Of course it bothers me.
A lion doesn't concern himself with the opinions of the sheep.
Jaime grew up wanting to be a knight, looking up to knights such as Sir Arthur Dayne and Sir Duncan the Tall, men who he idolised. He admired men still alive such as the Blackfish of House Tully, ignoring the Tully's daughters as he asked Brendan about his role in the War of Nine Penny Kings. He was only a squire at the time, but he had aspirations to be an honourable knight, remembered in the history books. A final point to mention on his family's past is his relationship with his younger brother Tyrion. Cersei despised Tyrion, as she blames him for killing their mother. Tywin despises Tyrion for being a burden on his pride, and how outsiders would perceive House Lannister with him being a dwarf as the son. Jaime, on the other hand, cared for his brother with true love and affection, thus becoming the only person who Tyrion could have a loving relationship with. Jaime was going to become a lord who had been married to Lysa Tully, as Tywin arranged, but Cersei did not want this and would play a role in convincing him to join the King's Guard. It would keep the twins together, especially since she was potentially having an arranged marriage with Rhaegar Targaryen. More importantly, Jaime would be appointed at the King's Guard at 15, as Aerys Targaryen used this as a humiliation act against Tywin to strip his son of ever entitling any lands. Nonetheless, the boy still viewed the King's Guard as the highest honour. That highest honour, however, proved to be the worst nightmare for the young Lannister. The king he swore his oath to was Aerys Targaryen, also known as the Mad King. The ruler who had lost his mind from paranoia after being held captive at Duskendale for months and developing an obsession for wildfire. Aerys would lose control in the Seven Kingdoms, especially after the alleged abduction of Lyanna Stark by his son, Rhaegar Targaryen. Rickard and Brandon Stark would demand where Lyanna was, leading to Aerys executing them with wildfire. Brandon strangled himself to death trying to save his father, who was being burnt alive. Jaime was now guarding a tyrant who had gone mad. He was 16 years old and witnessed a horrific execution. His mind retreated to thoughts of Cersei to cope with what he just witnessed. The king's hysterical laughter and the screams of the burning echoed in his head as he tried to hide in his mind from the madness. He swore an oath, however, meaning that he had to abide as king and must protect him at all costs. A man who wanted to be Arthur Dayne became a man who guarded pure evil. Aerys would reach further lows in his paranoia, planting wildfire under the entire city of King's Landing that could kill up to 500,000 innocent people. But as Robert's rebellion commenced and Rhaegar Targaryen was subsequently killed at the Trident, Aerys' paranoia took stranglehold once again, as he believed he must burn King's Landing with the wildfire he had set up, screaming and repeating the phrase, "Burn them all," a phrase that would be trapped in the mind of the young Lannister forever. Lannister forces were outside the city walls, with Aerys demanding Jaime bring him his own father's head to prevent them getting in. he would destroy the city with his wildfire and give the pyromancer Rosart the order to do so. The choice whether to stand by the oath had to be made, and Jaime chose to break it. He killed the pyromancer and returned to the throne room. There sat the Mad King in his paranoia on the Iron Throne. Burn them all! He repeated until Jaime struck Aerys in the back, ending Targaryen rule in Westeros. Upon the slaying of the king he swore to protect, Jaime sat on the Iron Throne, contemplating what he had just done. There was a contradiction that split his mind of his oath to the king, who was a tyrant, against an oath to the people, of which he saved hundreds of thousands. Despite this, Ned Stark, who saw Jaime sat on the throne, was quick to judge the former guard of Aerys Targaryen. He viewed Jaime as an opportunist for his father Tywin, who was sacking the city. He also saw Jaime as an oathbreaker, which to Ned, being the honourable man he was a disgusting act. The final judgment of the young Lannister was how when Jaime witnessed the death of Rickard and Brandon, he just stood there and watched. But as soon as Tywin arrives to breach the city, now Jaime decides to finally act. This judgment caused Jaime to lean into the darker side of himself, where he would embrace the title of Kingslayer, as Ned would not listen to his side, and neither would anyone else. The man he viewed as the most heroic in the Seven Kingdoms saw him as a scum. And deep down, Jaime's most heroic act meant nothing to the eyes of the people of Westeros, or the people he had saved. After the coronation of King Robert as King of the Seven Kingdoms and marriage to Cersei, Jaime would continue to serve in the King's Guard, though more disinterested in the rules and oaths of the role. He would continue his relationship behind the scenes with Cersei, behind Robert's back, where children of the newly crowned king were not actually his, but rather of Jaime's. Robert was completely unaware that his heir, Joffrey Baratheon, was not his and entirely of Lannister blood. If this knowledge was to get out, the politics of Westeros would change forever. During a royal visit to Winterfell, Jaime and Cersei would indulge in their intimate activities, in which Brandon Stark catches them in the act. Jaime immediately grabs the boy, asking him what he is doing, with Cersei behind him imploring that he do something about the situation. To which Jaime says, "The things we do for love," as he proceeds to knock Bran out the window, paralysing the boy. Later on, he does encounter Jon Snow, Ned Stark's bastard son, stating that he is good that he is serving the Night's Watch in a sarcastic tone, of course, as Jaime understands the oaths in the world, in which the Night's Watch has one of the most serious oaths you can pledge yourself to. Upon their return to King's Landing with Ned Stark, Jaime would finally have a proper conversation with the Warden of the North, who was to become the King's hand to Robert Baratheon. The tension within the room could be felt, the same room where Rickard and Brandon were both executed. Jaime attempted to prove that he was on Ned's side, but Ned judged him once again, claiming that Jaime played it safe and struck the Mad King down when it was safe to do so, but did nothing when the Starks were being executed. This response startled Jaime.
Must be strange for you, coming into this room. I was standing right here when it happened. It was very brave, your brother, and your father too. They didn't deserve to die like that. Nobody deserves to die like that.
But you just stood there and watched.
500 men just stood there and watched. All the great knights of the Seven Kingdoms. You think anyone said a word, lifted a finger? No, Lord Stark. 500 men, and this room was silent as a crypt. Except for the screams, of course. And the Mad King laughing. And later, when I watched the Mad King die, I remembered him laughing as your father burned. It felt like justice.
Is that what you tell yourself at night? You're a servant of justice. That you were avenging my father when you shoved your sword in Aerys Targaryen's back.
Tell me, if I stabbed the Mad King in the belly instead of the back, would you admire me more?
You served him well. When serving was safe.
They would have a conflict again, but this time with swords, as Tyrion was captured by Catelyn Stark. The two would collide in a duel that ended by a Lannister guard. Despite their dislike for each other, Jaime still respected the duel, much preferred to defeat Ned without the interference. After the beginning of the War of the Five Kings, Robb Stark marched down south after Ned Stark's death, capturing Jaime Lannister at the Wailing Woods. He fought valiantly, defeated many Northerners in battle. He was captured by the Starks and detained as a prisoner, and in Catelyn Stark's mind, could be traded to Joffrey and the Lannisters for Sansa and Arya's return from King's Landing. In captivity, Jaime would ask Catelyn why there is so much injustice in the world, to which she blames men like him, and he responds saying that there are no men like him. There are no men who saved hundreds of thousands, if that, just to be called dishonourable and shunned by those he admired. He was no Arthur Dane, rather the inverse of the man he wanted to be. Assigned with trading in the Kingslayer for the Stark girls, Brienne of Tarth would escort Jaime south to King's Landing without the consent of Robb Stark, making this a treasonous act. With Robb now aggravated by the release of Jaime, Brienne continued with her mission, taking the Kingslayer along with her while he berated her with words and insults. Jaime would steal a sword and duel with Brienne, holding his own despite his malnourishment from captivity and being manacled. After all, he was a gifted swordsman. It was this identity he branded himself with, as the honour he dreamt of being a knight was no longer a reality when the world called him an oathbreaker. As long as he had his sword, he was still great in his own eyes, unaffected by what people thought of him.
A great beast of a woman. You shouldn't grimace before you lunch. It gives away the game. If you kill me, you fail Lady Stark. But if you don't kill me, I'm going to kill you. You good. Graceless, but good.
Give the man his silver.
Let us go. My father will pay you whatever you want.
Enough to buy me a new head? If the king in the north hears I had the Kingslayer and let him go, he'll be taking it right off. I'd rather he takes yours.
The duel was interrupted by the brave companions, who captured both Jaime and Brienne, holding them hostage and ruthlessly terrorising them until Jaime believes he could get out the situation with his wit and Lannister fortune at his father's behest, with the common word spoken by him and Tyrion that their father could pay a handsome reward for letting them be free. At first, it seems that these men were going to let them free and help them, but then, disaster strikes.
Have you got something to say? Careful. You don't want to say the wrong thing. You're nothing without your daddy. Your daddy ain't here. Never forget that. Yeah, this should help you remember.
Jaime's hand is cut clean off. No longer could he be the swordmaster he trained and fought so valiantly to become. He could no longer fight, his entire world collapsing in that very instant of his hand being severed from his arm. At Harrenhal, the mains Jaime Lannister and Brienne were bathed before they were brought before Roose Bolton. There, Jaime would inform Brienne about the truth. At first, it may have been a venting of frustration from losing his mind, therefore losing himself in the mask he created, but this revelation of trauma turned into something else, a truth of who Jaime deep down was. When Brienne referred to him as Kingslayer once again in the bath, Jaime informed her of the side of the story that people judged him for. Jaime felt that honourable men like Ned Stark condemned him, but the growing respect between him and Brienne allowed him to finally speak the truth in his mind. He trusted her as she displayed her honour and dedication to her journey throughout, and her commitment to the oath she made to Catelyn Stark.
You all despise me, Kingslayer, oathbreaker, man without honor. Arrows saw traitors everywhere. So he had his pyromancer place caches of wildfire all over the city. Finally, the day of reckoning came. Robert Baratheon marched from the capital after his victory at the Trident, but my father arrived first. So we opened the gates and my father sacked the city. Once again I came to the king, begging him to surrender.
told me to bring him my father's head. Burn them all, he said. Burn them in their homes, burn them in their beds. Tell me if your precious Bendy commanded you to kill your own father and stand by while thousands of men, women, and children burned alive, would you have done it? Would you have kept your oath then? When the king turned to flee, I drove my sword into his back. Burn them all, he kept saying. Burn them all.
If this is true, why didn't you tell anyone? Why didn't you tell Lord Stark?
Stark? You think the Honorable Ned Stark wanted to hear my side? He judged me guilty the moment he set eyes on me. By what right does the wolf judge the lion? By what right?
The Kingslayer!
Jaime. My name's Jaime.
Upon meeting Lord Bolton, Roose already in his mind recognises that the war is turning against Robb Stark of the North, and his ticket for his own personal victory was right in front of him. To trade Jaime and himself without the Kingslayer bearing any more pain or scars from him in particular could help maintain House Bolton after the end of the war. The terms were now clear. Jaime was to inform his father Tywin that Bolton was not responsible for the loss of his hand and that it was his men acting without orders. And he sends his warm regards, alluding to him defecting from Robb Stark, and also that Brienne must remain in Harrenhal.
As soon as you're well enough to travel, I will allow you to go to King's Landing as restitution for the mistakes my soldiers made. And you will swear to tell your father the truth, that I had nothing to do with your maiming. Oh, she won't be going with you.
I am charged with bringing Sir Jaime to...
You are charged with abetting treason.
I'm afraid I must insist.
You're in no place to insist on anything. I would have hoped you'd learned your lesson about overplaying your position.
Both are startled by this reprimand, but Brienne had technically committed treason for freeing and escorting Jaime in the first place, but nevertheless, in a sarcastic tone, Jaime replies stating,
Tell Robb Stark I'm sorry I couldn't make his uncle's wedding. The Lannisters send her regards.
After leaving Harrenhal, Jaime would have vivid thoughts of Brienne, and even have concern for her, and once he received word that she may be in trouble, he rushed back to Harrenhal to find Brienne in a bear pit fighting a grizzly bear with a wooden sword. Jaime dived into the pit to defend her and fend off this bear, while his new escorts, tasked with bringing him to Tywin, shot arrows at the bear. The men of Bolton had to let Brienne go with Jaime, or else any more harm to Jaime would be meeting the wrath of Roose Bolton. Returning to King's Landing, this time without his hand, Jaime was reunited with his family, although not to the warmest of reception. Tywin merely saw his son losing his hand as a reason to finally have him out of the King's Guard, but Jaime's new established sense of honour from his time with Brienne prompted him to stay in the Guard. Tywin did not take kindly and effectively disowned his son for this, giving him a Valyrian steel sword forged from Ned Stark's, stating that a man with no family will need it. The devastation did not end with his father, however, as Cersei, who had once loved Jaime for being a reflection of her own beauty, was repulsed by him for being dirty, bearded, and maimed. Her narcissistic ego did not stop here, as she greeted her brother with blame for taking too long to return and abandoning her in her own eyes. She viewed him as less useful after he established his new sense of honour. His younger brother Tyrion was the only Lannister who showed genuine joy to see Jaime again, but he was on trial for the murder of King Joffrey Baratheon. Jaime did not particularly like his biological son. The boy king was just pure cunningness. In the trial by combat, Oberyn Martell lost his fight to the Mountain, thus Tyrion was to be executed. Jaime could not stand by and let this happen, so he takes matters into his own hands and he frees Tyrion from captivity, and leads him to a tunnel so he can escape. The brothers hug it out for what could be the last time. The sword Tywin gave Jaime had irritated Jaime as he no longer had his hand to wield it, so he instructed Brienne to use it to find the Stark girls and to name it the Oathkeeper, contrary to the name that Westeros labelled him. His second biological son, Tommen Baratheon, orders Jaime to secure Riverrun from the Tullys and the Stark-aligned forces to maintain their relationship with the Freys. The siege is ongoing by the Freys, but Jaime plays more of the role of a negotiator in preventing the loss of life in Riverrun. He uses the captured Edmund Tully from the Red Wedding to stand the troops down who were inside against the wishes of the Blackfish. This allows the Lannister and Frey forces to control Riverrun as the Blackfish escapes. No troops were killed, bringing a more civilized end to the conflict, as Jaime intended. The character of Jaime Lannister is a complex and deeply layered one. At first, an arrogant, brash and disliked fighter, transforming into that of an individual who made moral decisions in the past that people saw as evil or wrong, forcing him to embrace the label society nailed upon him. The Kingslayer we saw in the beginning, when we first saw him, is just a character Jaime Lannister created to hide from the shame. Now he has returned to honour and compassion, and no longer needs to care about the opinions of the Lannisters who manipulated him and distorted his mind. He now believes in the values that he looked up to in the very beginning.
Jaime. My name's Jaime.